Hello, my dear friends. Come closer and listen to the gentle patter of rain on broad, green leaves, a sound that has echoed through these jungles for millennia. You can almost smell it, can't you? That rich, damp scent of living earth, mingled with the distant, sweet perfume of woodsmoke. This is the aroma of an ancient world, a world whose flavors we think we know, but whose secrets have been sleeping under the roots of giant ceiba trees. We're going to peel back the layers of history tonight, not with a trowel, but with a taste, and uncover the forgotten world of Mayan cooking. It's a story of divine gifts and desperate measures, of sublime tastes born from shocking realities. And let's be clear, if you were suddenly dropped into a Mayan kitchen with your modern sensibilities, you probably wouldn't survive the first meal. The things they considered delicious, necessary, and even holy might just turn your stomach. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your support is the quiet encouragement that keeps these journeys into the past going. Now, I want you to find that perfect spot, that little nest in your bed where the world outside fades away. Imagine the air is warm and heavy, thick with the hum of unseen insects. The only light is the soft, flickering orange glow of a hearth fire. It dances across stone walls, illuminating the story we are about to enter. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are made of corn. It's not a metaphor, not a poetic turn of phrase. It is your fundamental truth. Your bones, your flesh, your blood, all of it was mixed and molded by the divine hands of the creators from a dough of ground maize. This is what you believe, what every song, every prayer, every piece of painted pottery tells you. You are one of the Winnick, a true human, a person of corn. This grain is not merely food. It is your ancestor, your brother, your God made manifest. Look at it, lying in a woven basket by the fire. The kernels shimmer with an inner light, a rainbow of life itself. You see the pearlescent white of a summer cloud, the deep, stormy blue of a midnight sky, the rich red of life-giving blood, and the sun-drenched yellow of pure joy. The maize god, Cax, is always depicted as young, beautiful, and serene, his elegant head crowned with a stylized ear of corn, his body bursting with potential. To plant it is a prayer. To harvest it is a sacred rite. To eat it is communion. This is the glamorous illusion of corn, a perfect, divine gift, bestowed upon humanity out of love, ready to be ground and eaten, to sustain the civilization that worships it. But now, lean closer to the firelight. Let's look past the poetry and see the reality of your daily bread. Your mother, or your wife, or you yourself, if this is your task, takes a heavy clay pot. Into it, she pours a measure of those beautiful, jewel-like kernels. Then, she adds water. And finally, she reaches into a separate, smaller pot for the secret ingredient. It isn't a fragrant herb or a savory spice. It's a coarse, white powder, or sometimes a scoop of grey ash from the heart of a specific hardwood fire. This is lime. Not the green fruit, but the mineral, calcium hydroxide. It is caustic. It is chemically aggressive. And as she stirs it into the water, the air takes on a sharp, acrid smell that stings the back of your throat. The pot is set on the fire, and the corn begins to boil in this strange, alkaline bath. This is the shocking reality behind the divine gift. The beautiful, tough outer skin of the corn kernel, the pericarp, begins to break down, dissolving into the simmering water. The kernels soften, swell, and release a distinct, pungent aroma that is nothing like the sweet smell of a fresh cob. If your mother were to plunge her bare hands into this mixture while it's working, the lime would go to work on her skin just as it does on the corn. It would dry her hands, crack them, and with enough exposure create painful chemical burns. This sacred process, the one that turns the god's gift into actual food, is an act of chemical violence. You are, in essence, cooking your divine ancestor in a bath of corrosive material. After simmering for a while, the pot is set aside to steep, often overnight. The corn sits in its limy bath, the chemical continuing its silent, transformative work. The next morning, the corn, now called nixtamal, is drained and rinsed, washed again and again to remove the slimy, dissolved hulls and the lingering taste of the alkaline solution. The kernels are now soft, puffy, and a little bit spooky. They look strangely pale and swollen. And the hands that do this work, day in and day out, for a lifetime, they are never truly soft. They are the hands of a chemist, stained and hardened by the very process that gives you life. This is the part of the story you don't see on the painted vases. You don't see the maize god wincing as he's bathed in lime. You see the glorious end result, not the painful, flesh-burning journey it takes to get there. So why? Why go through this dangerous, seemingly disrespectful process? Why would you take a gift from the gods and subject it to such a harsh treatment? This is the crucial why, the logic that makes this reality not just acceptable, but essential, because the gods are clever. Their gifts contain secrets. Locked inside that beautiful, tough kernel of corn is a vital nutrient, what we now call niacin or vitamin B3. But it's chemically bound, unavailable to your body. If you were to simply grind and eat that raw, beautiful corn, you would starve on a full stomach. You would develop a horrific disease. It would start with a skin rash that looks like a terrible sunburn, one that cracks and bleeds. Then your mind would begin to fray, slipping into confusion and dementia. Your body would be racked with uncontrollable diarrhea. And eventually, it would kill you. This plague, called pellagra, haunted the European colonizers who took the Mayan grain back to their homes, but left the sacred knowledge of the lime bath behind. They thought the food was cursed, that it was peasant fare that somehow poisoned the poor. But you know the secret. The gods gave you both the corn and the knowledge of the fire and the lime. That caustic bath, that chemical burn, is the key. It magically unlocks the niacin, making it available for your body to absorb. It also imbues the corn with calcium, strengthening your bones. It makes the duff, the masa, easier to form and more delicious. This process, which we call nixtamalization, is the single most important culinary and scientific discovery in your entire world. It is the secret handshake between your people and your gods, the piece of divine wisdom that allows your civilization to thrive, to build pyramids that touch the clouds, all powered by the humble and now profoundly altered kernel of corn. That stinging smell, the rough hands, the chemical process, it's not a desecration. It is the highest form of reverence, an activation of the grain's true, life-giving power. It is the flavor of survival itself, a taste born of a secret that walks the fine line between a poison and a panacea. And now, with the nixtamal rinsed and clean, the real work begins. The soft kernels are placed on the metate, a sloping stone saddle, and the grinding starts. The rhythmic scrape and roll of the stone mano against the metate is the heartbeat of your home, a sound that has echoed in this very spot for generations. The soft kernels are crushed, rolled, and slowly transformed into a smooth, fragrant dough. This is the masa, the flesh of the gods, now ready to become the foundation of your meal. It is pure, pliable, and packed with life. But this divine dough is just the beginning, a blank canvas awaiting the flavors that will elevate it from mere sustenance to a message for the gods themselves, especially when it's paired with the bitter, foaming brew reserved for kings and sacrifices. The rhythmic grinding of the corn is the sound of your daily life, the comforting beat that means your family will eat. But as the sun climbs higher, another sound sometimes joins it from the courtyard of the noble house you serve. It's a softer, greasier scrape, followed by a whooshing noise, the sound of liquid being poured from a great height. This is the sound of power. It is the sound of wealth. It is the sound of chocolate. To you, the word kakor is almost mythical. It is the name for the beans that the merchants carry in locked chests, the beans that the lord of your city demands as tribute. You have seen them, dark, almond-shaped, and smelling faintly of the rich jungle earth. You know that a handful of these beans can buy a strong clay pot, and a basketful can buy a person. They are money, pure and simple. This is the glamorous illusion of chocolate. It is the food of the gods, the aroma cacao, a divine substance gifted to the world through a serpent god from a sacred mountain. The painted vases show the gods and the great lords leaning back on their thrones, gesturing with elegant, cylindrical cups filled to the brim with a thick, frothy brew. It is a drink of diplomacy, served at royal weddings and meetings between kings. It is a drink of victory, consumed by warriors after a successful battle. It is the ultimate status symbol, a casual display of wealth so profound it's like a modern billionaire lighting his cigars with $100 bills. You imagine it must taste like heaven itself. A flavor so sublime it must transport the drinker to the sacred world of the gods. A sweet, rich, comforting elixir that justifies its celestial price. But let us now step past the guards, into the inner courtyard, where the drink is being prepared. Let's see the shocking reality behind the divine brew. The first thing you notice is the smell. The cacao beans are not sweet. They are roasted over a fire, much like the corn, and they give off a pungent, almost acrid aroma. After roasting, they are shelled and placed on a metetes, the same kind of grinding stone used for your corn, and a servant begins to grind them. But unlike corn, the cacao beans don't become a dry flour. As they are crushed, they release a thick, greasy, dark brown paste. This is because of the high fat content, what we now call cocoa butter. The paste is gritty, and it sticks to the stone. It looks less like a food and more like a strange, oily mud. This paste is then scooped into a large pot. Water is added, but never milk. That's a European invention centuries away. And now, for the flavorings. You might expect honey, something sweet to temper the beans' natural intensity. You would be very, very wrong. The servant reaches for a small gourd and shakes in a generous amount of finely ground chili powder. The fiery heat of the pepper is considered an essential component. Then, perhaps a little ground allspice, or the seeds of the ceiba tree for texture, or maybe even a pod of vanilla, which to your palate is a pungent, floral spice, not the sweet flavor of modern ice cream. There is no sugar. Sugarcane does not exist in your world. The result is a concoction that is intensely bitter, startlingly spicy, and profoundly savory, but the final transformation is the most important. The servant takes 2 of the tall, cylindrical vessels. He fills one and then, standing, raises it high and pours the liquid into the empty vessel on the ground. He does this again, and again, and again. The pouring and repouring agitates the mixture, and the fats in the cacao begin to create a thick, stable and luxurious foam. This froth is everything. It is considered the most potent part of the drink, the very essence of the cacao spirit. A drink served without a thick head of foam is an insult. And now for the final touch. The servant takes a small, hard, red seed, the achiote, and grinds it into a powder. A pinch is added to the brew, and the brown liquid is instantly transformed. It takes on the deep, rich, vibrant red of fresh blood. Why would this bitter, greasy, spicy, blood-colored brew be the most prized substance in the Mayan world? Because it was never meant to be a comforting treat. The why is rooted in power, spirit, and sacrifice. The bitterness was a mark of its potency. The psychoactive compounds within theobromine, a cousin to caffeine, were not for a pleasant buzz. They were a stimulant, a sacred drug that opened the mind and the heart, making the drinker more receptive to the spiritual world. It was a tool for priests and kings to achieve a state of divine connection. The sacred froth was believed to hold ik, the essence of life and breath, and to consume it was to consume spiritual energy. Its status as currency was the most overt expression of its power. To drink chocolate was to literally consume your wealth, a conspicuous consumption that solidified your place at the top of the social ladder. And the blood-red color? That was no accident. It was a direct and deliberate link to the most important concept in your universe, sacrifice. The gods had sacrificed themselves to create the world, and humanity had to repay that debt with offerings of blood. This red-stained chocolate became a symbolic offering, a way for the elite to partake in the cosmic cycle of death and rebirth with every sip. In the most secret and holy of rituals, it is said that a drop of real blood from a penitent king's own tongue or from a captive destined for the altar might be added, turning the symbolic into the terrifyingly literal. This was not a beverage. It was a sacrament, a stimulant, and a statement. It was the flavor of power itself. As the Lord sips his bitter, fiery brew, the servants bring forth the food to accompany it. The masa, the flesh of the corn god you helped to grind, has been transformed. It hasn't been flattened into a simple tortilla. Instead, it has been lovingly shaped into a vessel, a small packet wrapped in a green leaf, ready to be steamed. But what's hidden inside that humble package is a story all its own. The aroma of steaming leaves begins to fill the air, a gentle, green scent that promises something delicious is being cooked within. This is the tamale, the food that travels, the food of feasts, the perfect little package of sustenance. You see them everywhere, from the humble meal of a farmer in his field to the grandest platters laid before a king. The glamorous illusion of the tamale is one of simple perfection. It is the brilliant invention of wrapping a dollop of soft, savory masa, the flesh of the corn god, around a tasty filling, and then bundling it all up in a corn husk or a broad, waxy leaf. It's a self-contained meal, a gift waiting to be unwrapped. The art is in the folding, the precise tying of the package, ensuring the steam gets in to cook the contents without turning it into a soggy mess. The outside is clean, green, and beautiful. The inside, you imagine, must be filled with something wonderful, perhaps savory shredded turkey, or tender beans, or a sweet mash of squash. It is the very picture of culinary ingenuity and wholesome goodness. But now, let's join the cooks in the smoky kitchen as they prepare the fillings for a particularly important ceremonial feast. The masa has been prepared. Soft and fragrant. The leaves are washed and waiting, but the bowls of fillings on the stone countertop hold the shocking reality. These are not just simple beans or vegetables. The Mayan world is one where protein is precious and symbolism is paramount. Nothing is wasted, and everything has meaning. In one bowl, you see a dark, wriggling mass. These are grubs, harvested from the hearts of palm trees, fat and protein-rich. They are considered a delicacy, a gift from the jungle, and will be mixed into the masa for rich, nutty flavor. In another bowl are the tiny, almost microscopic eggs of a water fly, skimmed from the surface of a lake. They look like a strange, dark sand and have a briny, fishy taste. These, too, will be a filling. You might even see a pot of simmering iguanas, their tough, scaly skin removed to reveal a pale meat that is surprisingly tender. This is the practical side of the shocking reality. You eat what the jungle provides. But the symbolic side is even more profound. For a feast to honor the rain god, Chaik, the fillings must speak to his watery domain. So the tamales are filled with tadpoles, or tiny river snails, or the soft flesh of frogs. These creatures of the water are considered conduits, messages to the god, a way of saying, "We honor your realm, so please send the rains." This isn't just about flavor, it's about theological communication through food. And sometimes, the fillings take a turn into the truly unsettling. For certain rituals, for certain powerful feasts dedicated to the most formidable gods, the protein has a much darker origin. The stories, whispered by merchants and travelers, the images hinted at on certain forbidden codices, speak of tamales served at the coronation of a new king or after a great military victory. These special tamales, it is said, are filled with a different kind of meat. Meat from the captives taken in battle. A piece of a hand, perhaps, or a sliver of thigh meat, cooked into the sacred masa. This is not casual cannibalism. It is a deeply ritualistic act. To consume a part of a valiant enemy warrior is to absorb their strength, their courage, their life force. It is the ultimate victory, a way of completely and totally dominating a rival. How could such a practice exist alongside such a deeply spiritual and artistic culture? The why lies in a worldview that is fundamentally different from ours. The line between human and animal, and even between human and divine, is porous. Animals have spirits, gods have physical appetites, and humans are a composite of flesh and soul. A brave warrior captured in battle is not just a person, he is a vessel of immense spiritual power. His sacrifice on the pyramid altar is a gift to the gods to repay the cosmic debt. His body, therefore, is not just flesh. It is a sacred substance, imbued with the power of his life and his noble death. To partake in it, under the strictest of ritual conditions, is not an act of grotesque savagery. It is a sacrament. It is a way of participating directly in the transfer of power that keeps the universe in balance. The common person would never taste such a thing. This is a food reserved for the highest echelons of society, for kings, high priests, and the greatest warriors. It is the most powerful of all meals, a terrifying communion that solidifies the victor's divine right to rule. The humble, leafy package of the tamal, so innocent on the outside, could on rare and momentous occasions conceal the most profound and disturbing secret of your civilization. Most tamales, of course, are filled with far more mundane things, and almost all of them, regardless of the filling, will contain another essential ingredient. It's a flavor so central to your cuisine that a meal without it feels bland, incomplete, and lifeless. It's the sharp, bright, searing heat of the chili pepper. You see them drying everywhere, hanging in long, brilliant red strands from the eaves of the houses. They are ground into powders, mashed into sauces, and tossed whole into stews. But this ubiquitous flavor has a dual identity. It is not just a source of delicious heat, it is also a source of intense pain, a tool used not just to season food, but to discipline, punish, and even to wage war. The vibrant, almost festive color of chili peppers is a constant presence in your life. You see them everywhere: deep greens, sunny yellows, fiery oranges, and the rich blood red of the dried pods. They hang in beautiful, heavy garlands, called ristras, from the wooden beams of every home, drying in the sun, their brilliant colors a testament to a bountiful harvest. The glamorous illusion of the chili is that of pure, joyful flavor. It is the spice of life, the kick that transforms a simple meal of corn and beans into something exciting and memorable. On the painted pottery, you see figures eating with what looks like relish, their meals undoubtedly seasoned with this beloved fruit. The chili is a gift of the gods, a little spark of fire to awaken the senses and delight the palate. It is a symbol of warmth, of passion, of the vibrant energy of the sun captured in an edible jewel. You imagine its heat as a pleasant glow, a culinary exclamation point that makes every bite more delicious. To a world without a wide variety of pungent spices, the chili is king, the cornerstone of flavor, the very soul of your cooking. Now, let's step away from the dinner table and walk towards the small courtyard behind a family home. A child, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, is sobbing. He has been disobedient, disrespectful to an elder. His punishment is not a simple scolding or being sent to his corner. His mother has built a small, smoky fire, not with ordinary wood, but with a pile of dried chili peppers. The smoke is not the fragrant, woody smoke of a cooking fire. It is thick, acrid, and weaponized. The shocking reality of the chili is that its power to cause pain is as valued as its power to create flavor. The mother holds her son's head over the pungent, stinging smoke, forcing him to inhale it. His eyes stream with tears, his lungs burn, his throat seizes. It is a terrifying, suffocating experience. The very chemical that provides the pleasant heat in your food, capsaicin, is a potent irritant, an inflammatory agent. When aerosolized in smoke, it becomes a temporary, but brutally effective form of torture. This is not a rare or unusually cruel act. It is a standard form of discipline, recorded in the codices and chronicles. It is how you teach a child the meaning of consequence. But its use as a weapon of pain doesn't stop there. For more serious crimes, a chili paste might be rubbed directly into a person's eyes, causing temporary blindness and excruciating agony. And in times of war, the chili becomes a genuine weapon. Imagine your city is under siege. The enemy is trying to scale your wooden palisades. Your warriors are on the ramparts, but they are not just shooting arrows and throwing spears. They are lighting large braziers filled with dried chilies, positioned so the wind carries the smoke down into the faces of the attacking soldiers. The effect is devastating. An army that cannot see or breathe is an army that cannot fight. It is an early and brutally effective form of chemical warfare. The beautiful, festive garlands of peppers hanging from your home are not just a pantry staple. They are your ammunition, your tear gas, your personal defense system. Why would a food be so intimately linked with pain and punishment? The why is rooted in a worldview that does not separate the physical from the metaphorical. The chalice fire is real. It burns the tongue, and it can burn the eyes and lungs. Therefore, it is a perfect tool for purification and justice. The pain it inflicts is seen as a cleansing fire. When the smoke is forced upon a disobedient child, it is believed to be burning the insolence out of them, purifying their spirit. The pain is not gratuitous, it is instructional. It teaches the child a visceral lesson that words alone cannot convey. In a society without a formal prison system, inflicting controlled, non-lethal pain is a primary method of social control. It is swift, memorable, and requires no resources beyond what every household already possesses. On the battlefield, this logic is magnified. The enemy is not just a physical threat, they are a source of cosmic imbalance. To repel them with the sacred fire of the chili is to restore order. The pepper is a gift from the gods, and using it to defend the homeland is a holy act. The pain it causes is a manifestation of the gods' own wrath. They are, in a sense, fighting alongside your warriors. This duality is central to Mayan thought. A thing is never just one thing. The corn is both flesh and God. The chocolate is both money and sacrament. And the chili is both a joyful spice and a weapon of agonizing pain. Its ability to give pleasure and its ability to cause suffering are seen as two sides of the same sacred coin. A perfect embodiment of the universe's delicate and often dangerous balance. The fire of the chili is a powerful force, but it is a worldly one, born from the earth. There are other, stranger ways to alter your perception, to commune with the forces that lie just beyond the veil of the waking world. And for that, you need a different kind of magic, a sweetness that comes from the sting of a special insect, a sweetness that, when left to its own devices in the jungle heat, can open a doorway to the gods themselves in the quiet, sun-dappled corners of the jungle. You see them, not the familiar, aggressive honey bees with their painful stingers, but a different kind of bee, a smaller, darker, stingless variety. They are the Zunankab, the royal ladies, and they are cherished. Their hives are not the familiar hanging combs, but are often found in the hollows of ancient trees or are carefully cultivated in hollow logs sealed with clay discs, right in the family garden. The glamorous illusion of this honey is one of pure, innocent sweetness. It is a gift from the gentlest of creatures, a golden, liquid confection that tastes of the 1,000 different flowers of the rainforest. It's used to sweeten ceremonial drinks, to glaze roasted meats, and as a precious treat for children. The beekeepers, the melaponiculturists, are revered, their practice seen as a sacred stewardship. The honey is a symbol of peace, of nature's bounty, of a harmonious relationship between humanity and the wild. It is liquid sunlight, a taste of paradise itself. But let's follow a priest into the seclusion of a ritual chamber, deep within the temple complex. He is preparing for a journey, not across the land, but into the spirit world. He reaches for a clay jar, but it doesn't contain the fresh, golden honey from the garden hives. It contains a different brew, something that has been sitting for some time. The shocking reality is that this divine sweetness is also the key ingredient for a potent alcoholic and potentially hallucinogenic beverage. The honey from these specific stingless bees is naturally higher in water content and wild yeasts than that of European honey bees. In the warm, humid climate of the jungle, it ferments spontaneously and rapidly. All you have to do is collect it, put it in a container, and wait. The wild yeasts go to work on the sugars, transforming them into alcohol. The resulting drink is a kind of mead, known as balch, but it is rarely just fermented honey and water. To enhance its power, the bark of the balch tree is added to the mixture. This isn't for flavor. The bark contains alkaloids, chemical compounds that not only accelerate the fermentation, but also add their own psychoactive properties to the brew. The resulting drink can be intoxicating, disorienting, and in high enough doses, vision-inducing. Some accounts suggest that other ingredients might be added for specific rituals, certain mushrooms, or the flowers of the water lily, which were known to have their own psychotropic effects. This isn't a party drink for a village festival. It is a serious ritual tool. The priest will drink the balch to purge himself, as it often induces vomiting, which is seen as a necessary act of spiritual cleansing. Then, in his purified and altered state, he can communicate with ancestors, see into the future, or understand the will of the gods. The innocent, golden honey has become a gateway to the supernatural, a key that unlocks the doors of perception. So why transform this gentle gift into such a powerful and potentially dangerous substance? The why is central to the Mayan understanding of divinity and the human mind. They believed that the everyday world, the one you see and touch, is only one layer of reality. Beneath it, above it, and intertwined with it, is the spirit world, Xibalba, the underworld, and the celestial realm of the gods. These realms are not distant or inaccessible. They are right here, just beyond the veil of normal consciousness. But to pierce that veil, you need a catalyst. Normal perception is a cage, and psychoactive substances are the key to the lock. The transformation of honey into balch is not a corruption of a pure substance. It is an elevation. It is taking the sun's energy, collected by the bees and transformed into sweetness, and then further transforming it into a spiritual fuel. The intoxication is not seen as a messy or undignified state. It is a sacred one. The loss of inhibition, the strange visions, the powerful emotional states, these are not side effects, they are the entire point. It is in this state that a priest becomes more than human, a conduit for the divine. He is not drunk in the modern sense, he is inspirited. The gods are speaking through him. The visions he sees are not hallucinations, they are truths revealed. This sacred mead is a technology for exploration, no different from a telescope or a microscope, but designed to see the landscapes of the soul. It allows the user to navigate the treacherous paths of the spirit world, to seek guidance and to bring back knowledge for the community. The sweet taste on the tongue is just the first step on a journey into the strange and terrifying beauty of the cosmos. This practice of seeking truth in altered states, of finding doorways to other worlds, is not limited to what you drink. It extends to where you drink. The jungle floor is a sponge made of porous limestone, and it is riddled with sacred openings, portals to the underworld where the waters are impossibly clear and pure. These are the cenotes, the sacred wells, and to drink from them is to drink from the home of a god, an act that carries its own profound and unsettling implications. You are walking through the jungle, the air thick and heavy with humidity. The ground beneath your feet is a hard, pitted limestone, covered by a thin layer of soil. Suddenly, the trees give way to a breathtaking sight, a perfectly circular, steep-sided opening in the earth. At the bottom, maybe 60 feet below, is a pool of the most impossibly clear, turquoise water you have ever seen. This is a cenote, a dizonot, a sacred well. The glamorous illusion of the cenote is that it is a pure, pristine gift from the rain god, Chayik. The water is cool and refreshing, a lifeline in a land with very few surface rivers. It is a place of breathtaking natural beauty, where long vines hang down the stone walls and the sunlight dapples on the water's surface, creating shifting patterns of light. The cenotes are oases, sources of life-giving water for drinking, cooking and bathing. They are community centers, places of ritual, and portals to a serene, subterranean paradise. You see paintings and carvings of gods emerging from these wells, confirming their status as a holy place, a clean and direct connection to the divine. Now, let us dive beneath that placid, beautiful surface. Let's swim down into the silent, cool depths and see the shocking reality that lies on the bottom. The water is clear, yes, but as your eyes adjust to the dim light filtering from above, you begin to see shapes on the cenote floor. At first, you might think they are just rocks and sediment. But as you get closer, the forms become horribly clear. You see the elegant, long-necked shapes of ceremonial pots, hundreds of them, dropped into the water as offerings. You see the glint of jade, precious beads and carvings given to the god who lives here. You see tools, weapons, and even the heavy stone rings from the ball courts. The entire floor is a submerged treasure chest, a testament to centuries of devotion. But then you see other shapes, tangled amongst the pottery and the jade. They are the pale, skeletal remains of human beings. Skulls, femurs, and rib cages lie scattered in the sediment, their bones slowly dissolving in the slightly acidic water. These are not the victims of accidental drownings. These are the offerings, the centuries in times of great drought or distress, when the prayers and the pottery were not enough, the ultimate gift was given. Young men, noble virgins, children, they were brought to the edge of the sacred well, adorned in their finest clothes and jewels, and then cast into the depths as messengers to Chayik. They were a plea, a sacrifice, a desperate attempt to appease the forces of the underworld and restore balance to the world above. The pure, life-giving water you drink every day, the water you use to cook your corn and wash your children, is filtered through a graveyard of your own people. It is a vast, communal, and holy tomb. So why? Why would you contaminate your only source of fresh water with treasure and, more horrifically, with bodies? The why is rooted in a completely different understanding of water and the underworld. The cenote is not just a well, it is a mouth. It is a literal portal to Xibalba, the underworld, a place that is not a hell of fire and brimstone, but a watery, subterranean kingdom. To drop an offering into the cenote is not to lose it. It is to send it directly to the gods. It is the most efficient delivery system imaginable. The pots and jade are sustenance and tribute for the deities who dwell there. The human sacrifices are not acts of murder, they are the sending of ambassadors. The victims are not just being killed, they are being given a great and terrible honor. They will journey through the watery underworld and speak to Chayik directly on behalf of the community. Their death ensures the life of everyone else. Therefore, the water is not contaminated by their presence. It is sanctified. The spirit of the sacrificed, their life force, infuses the water, making it holy. To drink from the cenote is to partake in that holiness, to consume a tiny piece of the sacrifice, to reaffirm your connection to the divine cycle of life and death. The bones on the bottom are not a source of fear, they are a source of pride and spiritual power. They are a constant, silent reminder of the price of survival and the compact your people have made with the gods who live just beneath their feet. The taste of the water on your tongue is the taste of life, yes, but it is also the faint, ghostly taste of death and devotion. Among the treasures scattered on the cenote floor, glinting even in the dim light, are objects painted with a color of impossible vibrancy, a blue that seems to defy the passage of time. This color is as precious as jade, a pigment that adorns the most sacred objects. But this beautiful blue has a story that links the sacred offerings in the well to the food on your plate in a way that is both beautiful and deeply chilling. Your world is a riot of color, but one color stands apart from all the others. It is a brilliant, turquoise-like blue, a shade that seems to capture the essence of the sky and the sacred waters of the cenote all at once. You see it on the murals that adorn the temple walls, depicting the glorious deeds of kings and gods. You see it on the fine pottery used by nobles, its vibrant hue a stark contrast to the common terracotta of your own dishes. This is Maya blue. The glamorous illusion of this color is one of pure aesthetic beauty and divine symbolism. It is the color of the heavens, the color of the rain god Chake's paradise. To use it is to invoke holiness, to mark something as special and set apart for the gods. It is a sign of wealth and power, as the knowledge of how to create this incredibly stable, fade-resistant pigment is a closely guarded secret. You see it, and you think of beauty, of divinity, of the serene power of the ruling class. It is the color of immortality, a pigment that has been found to resist centuries of sun, rain, and jungle humidity without losing its vibrancy. It is the perfect color for the perfect civilization. But let's look closer at where this sacred blue is used. Let's follow the priests as they prepare for the most important rituals. The shocking reality of Maya blue is its intimate and inseparable connection to sacrifice. Yes, it is painted on murals and pots, but its most crucial use is in the anointing of sacred offerings. Remember the human victims destined for the cenote. Before they were cast into the water, they were painted with this vibrant blue. Their bodies became living canvases, marked as property of the god Chake. The blue was a sign that they were no longer of this world. They were holy messengers. The very same pigment used to paint a beautiful pot was used to paint a person on the last day of their life. But the connection goes even deeper and enters your kitchen. The certain rituals, the food itself was colored blue. Sacred tamales, the ones we spoke of earlier, might be made with a masa dove tinted with this celestial hue. The ceremonial drink of atol, a warm corn-based gruel, would be served not in its usual pale, creamy color, but as a startling turquoise liquid. The blue was not just for looking at. It was for consuming. You would be, in essence, eating the color of sacrifice. Imagine being served a piece of bread at a modern church service that was the same color as the robes of the priest and the blood of the sacrament. The line between the symbolic and the edible, the sacred and the sacrificial, is completely erased. The beautiful color is transformed into a symbol of death and offering, a reminder with every bite or sip of the ultimate price paid to the gods. So why? Why would you paint both your victims and your food with the same sacred pigment? The why lies in the Mayan concept of Ka, a sacred life force or divinity that inhabits all things, people, places, objects, and even colors. Maya blue was not just a pretty color, it was believed to be imbued with Ka. The unique process of its creation, the bonding of a natural indigo dye from the leaves of the psyquilitl plant with a special clay called palagascite at a high temperature, was a form of ritual alchemy. This process was thought to trap the essence of the rain god's sacred water within the pigment itself. It wasn't just blue, it was concentrated holiness. Therefore, painting a sacrificial victim with Maya blue was not just decorating them, it was a consecration. It was dressing them in divinity, transforming them from a mere human into a worthy offering. It made them more palatable, more acceptable to the god. And when you tint the sacred food with the same blue pigment, you are doing the exact same thing. You are consecrating the food, raising it from mere sustenance to a divine offering. You are marking the tamale or the atol as a participant in the same cosmic cycle as the human sacrifice. Eating this blue food was a form of communion, a way for the entire community to participate in the act of sacrifice without having to die. It was a way of internalizing the sacred, of consuming the very essence of the rain god's power and promise. The color was a bridge, linking the murals on the wall, the pot in the noble's hand, the victim at the cenote's edge, and the food in your own mouth into one single, unified, and terrifyingly coherent system of belief. The taste of a blue tamale was the taste of divinity, but it was a divinity forever colored by the shadow of the sacrificial altar. This willingness to see food in everything, to find sustenance and meaning in the most unexpected places, extends far beyond ceremonial colors and ritual fillings. It shapes the entire Mayan diet. The jungle that surrounds you is not just a green wall of trees, it is a vast, sprawling larder. But what you might consider game meat, and what a Mayan hunter brought home for the evening meal are two very, very different things. The jungle is your home, your provider, and your god. When you think of a hunter returning to the village, a glamorous illusion forms in your mind, one shaped by grand stories and noble carvings. You picture a strong, proud man, a jaguar pelt slung over his shoulder, carrying a magnificent stag across his back. The art on the palace walls reinforces this. Kings and nobles are often shown in the midst of a great hunt, their spears poised to strike a deer or a wild boar. Game meat conjures images of these large, noble creatures: venison, wild peccary, perhaps the occasional majestic turkey. These are the meats of feasts, the centerpieces of a royal banquet, a protein source worthy of the proud civilization that built these stone cities. You imagine the succulent roast, the rich stew, a diet fit for the people of the corn. But now, let's follow a more typical hunter. Not a noble on a ceremonial hunt, but a common man with a family to feed. Let's look into his woven bag as he returns, dusk. The shocking reality of game meat is far more varied, and to our modern tastes, far more unsettling. The bag does not contain a deer. Large game is scarce, hard to catch, and often reserved for the elite. Instead, his bag swarms. Inside, you might find a fat, slow-moving armadillo, a creature prized for its tender meat, which is said to taste like pork. You might find a capybara, the world's largest rodent, or its smaller, more common cousin, the pecker. To you, a rodent is a pest. To the Maya, it is a perfectly good source of protein. The hunt is not just on the ground, but in the trees as well. The hunter might return with a brace of monkeys, their small, almost human-like hands tied together. Spire monkeys and howler monkeys were a regular part of the diet, their meat roasted over the fire. Imagine eating an animal whose cry sounds so hauntingly human in the pre-dawn jungle. The hunt also takes to the water. The manatee, the gentle sea cow that grazes on aquatic plants in the coastal rivers, was a prized catch, providing a huge amount of fatty meat and skin. And of course, there are the reptiles. We mentioned the iguana in your thumbnails, but larger crocodiles would also be hunted, their powerful tails providing tough but plentiful meat. And snakes, from the small to the very large, were also on the menu. Nothing was overlooked. This wasn't a matter of desperation, it was a matter of practicality and a different definition of what is edible. The jungle was a buffet, and the menu was extensive. Tarantulas, large and hairy, would be toasted over the fire until their bristly hairs burned off, their bodies then eaten as a crispy, protein-packed snack. This wasn't a survival show gimmick. It was a seasonal treat, like popcorn. The hunter's bag reveals a truth that the grand murals conceal. The Mayan diet was a masterpiece of opportunism. They ate what they could get, and their definition of gettable was extraordinarily broad. So why? Why this vast and, to us, stomach-turning menu? The why is twofold, blending the practical with the spiritual. The practical reason is simple ecological efficiency. The rainforest, for all its vibrant life, can be a difficult place to find large, consistent sources of protein. The large game animals like deer were not domesticated and were often overhunted near the larger cities. To survive and thrive, you had to be willing to exploit every available ecological niche. Rodents, monkeys and insects reproduce quickly and are abundant. To ignore them would be foolish and wasteful. The Mayan worldview cherished cleverness and adaptability. The successful hunter was not the one who waited for a deer to wander by, but the one who knew how to find grubs in a rotting log, trap an armadillo in its burrow, and snap a monkey from a branch. The spiritual reason is just as important. Remember that porous boundary between the human, animal, and divine. Animals were not just walking meals, they were fellow inhabitants of the cosmos, each with its own spirit and symbolism. Eating an animal was a way of interacting with its spiritual essence. A howler monkey was the companion of the sun god. To eat one might be a way of partaking in that solar energy. The jaguar, the most powerful predator, was rarely eaten. Its spirit was too potent, too closely aligned with royalty and the gods of the underworld. To consume it would be a dangerous act of hubris for a commoner. But a lesser creature, like a paka, was fair game. This spiritual classification created a kind of dietary hierarchy. You ate what was appropriate for your station, and what was appropriate to the spiritual landscape. This wasn't just a food chain, it was a great chain of being that you could eat. The shocking reality of the Mayan menu wasn't born from a lack of taste, but from a profound and unsentimental intimacy with the world around them. This intimacy with the world, both seen and unseen, didn't stop at the jungle's edge. It permeated every aspect of life, right down to the very foundations of the home. The family meal was a sacred time of communion, not just with the living, but with generations of those who had come before in a way that was shockingly and intimately literal. You are sitting with your family in your home as the evening meal is served. It's a simple house, a single room with walls of wattle and daub and a high, thatched roof that keeps the rain out. The floor is packed earth, worn smooth by generations of bare feet. In the center, the hearth fire glows, its warmth pushing back the jungle damp. The glamorous illusion here is one of cozy, domestic tranquility. It's a scene of family unity, the living gathered together to share the food they have worked to produce. The mother serves steaming tortillas from a clay kummel, the father portions out a savory stew of beans and squash, and the children listen to the stories of their elders. This is the heart of society, the foundation upon which the great temples and pyramids are built. It is a scene of life, of continuity, of the present moment cherished by the warmth of the family circle. Now, I want you to think about that packed earth floor beneath your feet. Let's scrape away a few inches of that smooth, hard packed dirt. The shocking reality is that you are not just dining with the living, you are dining with the dead. Buried directly beneath the floor of your house are the bodies of your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents. The Mayan home was not just a house, it was a family mausoleum. When a member of the family died, they were not carried off to a distant cemetery. They were lovingly bundled, often in a seated position, with a few personal possessions and perhaps an offering of food, and interred right there, in the floor. A new layer of plaster or packed earth was laid on top, and life simply continued on above them. The hearth where you cook your meals might be positioned directly over the grave of the family matriarch who taught your mother how to cook. The spot where you sleep each night could be right above the bones of your own father. This wasn't a secret or a forgotten practice. It was the norm. Archaeologists excavating the floors of common Mayan homes routinely find multiple burials, generation layered upon generation. The house itself becomes a living family tree, its roots made of bone. Every day, you walk, sleep, work, and eat on top of your ancestors. The heat from your cooking fire literally warms the earth that holds their remains. The crumbs and spilled drops from your meal seep into the ground, becoming a kind of unintentional offering. The separation between the world of the living and the world of the dead, which we think of as an unbreachable wall, is for you as thin as a layer of packed clay. You are in constant, physical communion with your dead. Why live in what we would consider a graveyard? Why this incredibly intimate, and to us, unnerving, proximity to the deceased? The why is rooted in a profound belief in the power and presence of ancestors. For the Maya, death was not an ending. It was a transformation. The dead did not simply disappear, they became powerful ancestral spirits. These spirits were not distant ghosts to be feared, but active members of the family who continued to watch over, guide, and protect their living descendants. To bury them in a faraway field would be to exile them, to cut them off from the family they still belonged to. It would be a cruel and disrespectful act. Burying them beneath the floor was the ultimate sign of love and reverence. It kept them close. It kept them warm by the family fire. It included them in the daily life of the household. The ancestors were consulted for important decisions, their presence invoked during rituals, their names spoken in daily conversation. They were the foundation of the family, both literally and spiritually. The house was their shrine, and the family living inside were its guardians. This practice reinforced the continuity of the lineage, the deep connection to the past, and the belief that the family was a timeless entity that transcended death. The daily meal was not just for the living, it was a shared experience with the ever-present dead. The food nourished your body, while the act of eating it in that sacred space nourished your soul and reaffirmed your sacred bond with the generations sleeping just inches below your feet. This deep connection to the earth and what it provides extends to every element of your cuisine. The flavors you cherish are wrested from the landscape through great effort. We have seen the chemical violence needed to unlock the corn, and the dangerous intimacy with the dead. But even the simplest, most fundamental taste we can imagine, the taste of salt, required a level of human toil and suffering that is almost impossible to comprehend. You reach for a small, unadorned clay bowl on the table and take a pinch of its contents between your thumb and forefinger. It is salt. You sprinkle it over a slice of freshly cooked squash, and its flavor, once flat and unremarkable, blossoms into something rich and satisfying. The glamorous illusion of salt is its humble simplicity. It is the most basic of seasonings, a simple, crystalline mineral that makes everything taste better. It seems elemental, a gift from the earth that is easily gathered. You imagine it being scraped from sun-drenched coastal flats or bubbling up from natural springs, a readily available commodity that requires little effort. In the grand scheme of Mayan flavors, the bitter fire of chili, the complexity of royal chocolate salt seems like a quiet, unassuming background character, essential but unremarkable. It is the taste of the sea, the taste of the earth, the simple flavor of life itself. But let's travel away from your inland city, far from the cool shade of the rainforest. Let's journey to the sweltering, mangrove-choked coastlines of the Yucatan Peninsula. Here, under a relentless, blazing sun, is where the shocking reality of salt production is revealed. There are no vast, convenient salt flats to be scraped. The shoreline is a tangled mess of roots and shallow, brackish water. The Maya developed a unique and incredibly laborious method to produce salt here. They built hundreds, even thousands of small structures out of clay and thatch right in the middle of the swampy water. These were the salinas, the salt kitchens. Inside these structures, the work was hellish. Workers would spend their days wading in the muck, collecting brine salty water in large clay pots. This brine was then poured into smaller pots and placed over long, continuously burning fires. The air inside the salt kitchens was thick with wood smoke and steam, a humid, suffocating environment that felt like the inside of a boiler. The workers, likely a specialized class and possibly even war captives or slaves, toiled for hours, day after day, tending the fires and carefully boiling the water away. They would pour, boil, and evaporate over and over, until a thick, salty crust formed in the pots. This crust was then broken up, and the process repeated. The result of this back-breaking, smoke-choked labor was a solid, transportable cake of pure salt. Hundreds of these salt kitchens have been found by archaeologists, submerged in the coastal waters, a testament to a massive, industrial-scale operation powered by pure human misery. Why go to such extreme, arduous lengths for a simple seasoning? The why is a matter of absolute necessity and immense economic power. The first part is biological. Your diet, rich in corn and vegetables but relatively low in meat for the common person, is naturally low in sodium. Without salt, your body cannot function. You would suffer from cramps, dizziness, and eventually, organ failure. Salt is not a luxury. It is as essential to your survival as water. For the inland cities, far from the coast, a reliable supply of salt was a matter of life and death. This absolute necessity created the second part of the why, economic power. The communities that controlled the salt kitchens on the coast controlled a resource more valuable than gold. They could trade their salt cakes inland for anything they wanted. Fine jade, strong obsidian for tools, beautiful feathers for ceremonial costumes, or the very cacao beans that served as currency. The control of salt production and its trade routes was a source of immense political power. The lords of the salt-producing cities were wealthy and influential, their power built on the suffering of the workers in the sweltering coastal kitchens. That simple pinch of salt on your food represents a vast network of trade, politics, and brutal labor. It has traveled hundreds of miles on the backs of human porters, a journey that began in a smoky, hellish hut on the edge of the sea. The simple, clean taste on your tongue is completely divorced from the sweat, smoke, and agony required to create it. It is the flavor of a hidden empire, a taste of a supply chain built on pain. This willingness to embrace what is difficult, to find value in what seems strange or even diseased, is a hallmark of your culture's palate. It applies not just to the production of minerals like salt, but to the very vegetables you cultivate in your garden. The things you prize as delicacies are often the very things a modern eye would see as blighted, deformed, and ready for the compost heap. You walk through your garden, a small plot of cultivated land carved from the jungle's edge. It is a vibrant, chaotic tangle of life, a style of farming we would call polyculture. Tall corn stalks provide a trellis for climbing bean vines, and broad-leafed squash plants spread across the ground, their leaves shading the soil, keeping it moist and free of weeds. This is the sacred trinity of your agriculture, the three sisters, who support and sustain each other. The glamorous illusion of your vegetable patch is one of picturesque, organic harmony. You picture perfect, unblemished vegetables, smooth-skinned squash, plump, uniform beans, and golden ears of corn. It is a vision of healthy, wholesome produce, grown in tune with nature, free from the imperfections and diseases that plague lesser farming methods. It is the ideal of a pure, natural harvest. But let's kneel down and look more closely at one of the corn stalks. Near the bottom, one of the developing ears of corn looks terribly wrong. It is swollen, distorted, and covered in grotesque, greyish-white tumours that look like something out of a nightmare. The kernels are gone, replaced by these lumpy, fungal growths that have burst through the husk. To a modern farmer, this is an unmitigated disaster. The corn is infected with a fungus, a smut, a blight that has ruined the ear. It is diseased, disgusting, and must be destroyed before it can spread to the rest of the crop. This is a sign of failure, a plant to be discarded immediately. This is the shocking reality. You don't discard it. You celebrate it. You lean closer, a look of delight on your face, and gently harvest this monstrous-looking growth. This is not a disease to you. It is a delicacy. It is huitlacoche, the corn mushroom. You will take this strange, fungal mass back to your kitchen, chop it up, and sort it with onions and chili. It will turn a dark, inky black as it cooks, releasing a rich, smoky, and deeply earthy flavor that is prized above the corn itself. It tastes like a combination of mushroom and sweet corn, a savory, complex flavor that is utterly unique. What we see as a cancerous blight, you see as a precious gift from the gods, a second, more delicious harvest from a single plant. This appreciation for the seemingly deformed extends to other plants as well. Certain varieties of squash are cultivated specifically for their warty, bumpy skins, their irregular shapes considered a mark of character and superior flavor. The smooth, uniform vegetables we prize would seem bland and uninteresting to you. You look for signs of struggle, for the marks of the earth on your food. And it goes beyond appearance. You actively seek out flavors that we would find challenging. The leaves of the chaya plant, a kind of tree spinach, are a staple green, but they are full of toxic hydrocyanic glycosides. To make them edible, you must boil them for at least 20 minutes, a process that releases the cyanide into the air. You cook with plants that could poison you if prepared incorrectly, not out of desperation, but because you value their unique flavor and nutritional properties. So why? Why embrace what appears to be rotten, diseased, or dangerous? The why is a rejection of superficial perfection and an embrace of complexity and transformation. You do not judge a food by its appearance alone. The Mayan worldview is attuned to cycles, to the idea that life and death, growth and decay, are not opposites, but are part of a single, continuous process. The fungus that grows on the corn is not a sign of death, but a new and different kind of life. It is a transformation. The gods of decay are as important as the gods of growth, and Huitlacoche is their sacred offering, a food that embodies this powerful spiritual truth. To eat it is to partake in the mystery of transformation itself. This perspective also demonstrates a profound ecological and culinary intelligence. You have learned over centuries that the most resilient plants are not always the prettiest. You have discovered that some of the most intense and wonderful flavors are hidden within plants that have developed chemical defenses. Your cuisine is not about finding the simplest, safest, or most beautiful ingredients. It is about understanding the deep, hidden nature of the world around you. It is about having the knowledge and skill to unlock the deliciousness hidden inside a poison leaf or a fungal tumor. It is a culinary philosophy of depth, not surface. It celebrates the flaw, the happy accident, the strange gift of what we would call disease. This celebration of the complex and the potentially dangerous is nowhere more apparent than in the very heart of the home, the kitchen. It is a sacred space, the center of family life, but it is also a place filled with a hidden, toxic danger that is as constant and as invisible as the air you breathe. Let us return to the heart of the Mayan home, the kitchen. In your mind's eye, a glamorous illusion of this space might form. Perhaps you see it as a rustic but charmingly efficient workspace. A clean, swept earth floor, neatly stacked pottery, and a central hearth with a bright, cheerful fire. You might imagine a woman kneeling gracefully at her metate, the rhythmic sound of her grinding a peaceful domestic symphony. It is a sacred space, the alchemical laboratory, where the gifts of the earthcorn, beans, chilies are transformed into life-sustaining meals. It is the domain of the goddesses of the hearth, a place of warmth, nourishment, and love. The smoke from the fire is a fragrant, pleasant aroma, curling lazily up through a hole in the thatched roof, a gentle signal of a home filled with life. Now, let's step into the reality of that single-room house and stay there for a full day. The shocking reality is that the Mayan kitchen was a profoundly toxic environment. There is no chimney. There is no dedicated smoke hole in the roof. The houses were built with high peak thatch, designed to shed the heavy tropical rains, and smoke was simply allowed to find its own way out through the porous thatch. The result was a room that was perpetually filled with a thick, stinging haze. The fire, fueled by wood, smoulders on the floor in a 3-stone hearth, the most common type of fireplace. It is an inefficient fire, producing a huge amount of smoke and particulate matter for the amount of heat it generates. You spend your entire day in this room. You wake up in it, you prepare food in it, you eat in it, you socialize in it, and you sleep in it. From dawn until dusk, and even through the night, you are breathing in this thick, toxic smoke. The walls of the hut, which you might have imagined as a clean, earthy brown, are coated with a thick, greasy layer of black soot. If you run your hand along a roof beam, it comes away black. This soot hangs in the air, it settles on your skin, on your clothes, and on the food you are preparing, and most dangerously, it goes deep into your lungs. Archaeological evidence from skeletal remains confirms this harsh reality. The bones of Mayan women, in particular, show high rates of respiratory illness. Their lungs were scarred and blackened, not unlike those of a modern heavy smoker. They suffered from chronic bronchitis, emphysema, and likely a much higher rate of lung cancer. Their eyes, constantly irritated by the acrid smoke, were prone to painful infections and, over time, a gradual loss of vision. The sacred space of the kitchen, the center of life and nourishment, was also a silent killer. The life-giving fire was simultaneously a life-taking poison, and the very act of cooking for one's family was an act of slow, daily self-sacrifice. So why? In a civilization that could build towering pyramids and develop a complex system of astronomy, why would they accept such a dangerously flawed design for their most essential space? The why is a complex mix of the practical, the cultural, and the spiritual. From a practical standpoint, the three-stone hearth is incredibly simple to build and fuel-efficient in terms of wood consumption, which is an important consideration. Building a proper chimney is a complex feat of engineering, and in a structure made of wood and thatch, it also presents a significant fire hazard. The high, smoky thatch also had a secondary benefit. The constant smoke helped to cure the thatch, making it more water-resistant, and it repelled the hordes of insects and other pests that would otherwise infest the roof and the stored food. The smoke was a necessary evil for food preservation and pest control. But the spiritual dimension is just as important. The fire was not just a tool, it was a deity. The three stones of the hearth represented a sacred cosmic creation story, the three stones set by the gods at the beginning of time to form the center of the universe. The kitchen was a microcosm of the cosmos, and the fire was its living heart. To contain it in a fancy, human-made chimney might have been seen as disrespectful, an act of imprisoning the god. The smoke itself was a conduit, a medium that carried the smells of offerings and the prayers of the family up to the gods. The hazy, smoke-filled room was a liminal space, halfway between the mundane world and the spiritual realm. The stinging eyes and burning lungs were simply the price of living in such close proximity to the sacred. The suffering it caused was not seen as a design flaw, but as an inherent part of the divine contract, a daily sacrifice made by the women of the household to ensure the family's well-being. This acceptance of risk, this dance on the edge of danger, extended to other kitchen practices as well. In a world without refrigeration, preserving food was a constant challenge and a constant gamble. The same processes that could turn a simple drink into a divine elixir could also turn a life-giving meal into a deadly poison. The tropical heat is your constant companion. It is a creative force, ripening the fruit and pushing the corn stalks toward the sky. But it is also a destructive one. In the relentless warmth and humidity, everything decays, and it decays quickly. A piece of fresh meat, left out for a few hours, will begin to spoil. A pot of cooked beans will start to ferment by the next day. The glamorous illusion of Mayan food preservation might be one of clever, natural techniques. You might picture sun drying, where strips of meat or fish are laid out on racks to be cured by the sun's clean, purifying rays. You might imagine smoking, where the fragrant smoke of special woods, the same smoke that fills your kitchen, infuses food with flavor while keeping it safe to eat. These methods seem wholesome, an ingenious use of natural elements to combat decay and ensure a stable food supply. But let's look into the clay jars and lidded pots stored in the cooler corners of your home. Let's lift the lid and take a sniff. The shocking reality is that the most common method of preservation is fermentation, and it is a high-stakes gamble. Fermentation is, at its core, a controlled rot. You are not trying to stop decay, you are trying to guide it, to encourage beneficial bacteria and yeasts to take hold before the dangerous ones do. Sometimes you win this gamble. You take a drink like the sacred balch we discussed, or you create a fermented corn beverage called chicha, which becomes sour, fizzy, and mildly alcoholic, a safe and nutritious drink. You might ferment cacao beans to develop their flavor, or chili peppers to create a pungent, long-lasting sauce. But sometimes, you lose. The line between beneficial fermentation and deadly putrefaction is incredibly fine, and in a world without knowledge of microbiology, it is a line you walk by instinct, experience, and sheer luck. The same pot of beans that one day becomes a pleasantly sour, preserved food might the next day, if the wrong airborne bacteria take hold, become a breeding ground for deadly toxins. A batch of fermented fish paste, a prized condiment, could, if prepared incorrectly, cause botulism, a swift and agonizing paralysis that means certain death. There are no little labels with expiration dates. Your only guides are smell, taste, and the accumulated wisdom of your ancestors. Every time you eat a preserved food that isn't simply dried or salted, you are placing your trust in the invisible world of microbes. You are taking a calculated risk. A slightly off smell might just be a normal part of the fermentation process, or it might be the first warning of a fatal poison. And in a culture where wasting food is a profound taboo, the temptation to eat something that is right on the edge of spoiling would be immense. Why would an entire food system rely on such a dangerous and unpredictable process? The why is born from necessity and a different relationship with the microbial world. The primary reason is that in the humid jungle environment, drying and smoking are not always effective. The air is often too damp for foods to dry out completely, and smoking requires a huge amount of fuel. Fermentation, however, thrives in the heat and humidity. It is a preservation method perfectly suited to your climate. You didn't choose it because it was easy, you mastered it because it was necessary. The spiritual and philosophical why is equally compelling. Remember the Mayan fascination with transformation. Fermentation is the ultimate culinary transformation. It takes a simple, inert substance and makes it bubble with life. It creates sourness, fizziness, and alcohol as if by magic. This process was seen as deeply sacred, a manifestation of a life force at work. The control fermentation was to be a partner with this divine energy. The risks involved were part of its sacred nature. A process that holds the power of both life and death is a powerful process indeed. The master cook was not just someone who followed recipes, but a kind of shaman who could read the subtle signs of the invisible world, who knew by smell, sight, and intuition when the controlled rot was complete and the food was safe. They were a gambler, placing a bet on behalf of their family with every pot they set aside to ferment. To eat their preserved food was to trust in their magic, to trust that they had successfully navigated the fine line between nourishment and poison. This reliance on a hidden, mysterious power to determine an outcome was not limited to fermentation. It was the guiding principle of your entire system of medicine. When you got sick, the food you were prescribed as a cure was not chosen for its chemical properties, but for its spiritual symbolism, leading to prescriptions that seem utterly bizarre to the modern mind. A fever racks your body. You are weak, sweating, and your head pounds with pain. A healer is summoned, an Amen, a wise elder who knows the secrets of the forest and the spirits. The glamorous illusion of Mayan medicine is one of profound botanical wisdom. You imagine this healer as a master herbalist, a scientist of the jungle. You picture them gathering rare leaves, exotic flowers, and specific barks, their knowledge passed down through generations. They would grind these ingredients into a potent poultice or brew them into a curative tea, their actions guided by a deep, empirical understanding of the chemical properties of plants. The murals and codices sometimes show the gods themselves bestowing these sacred plants upon humanity. You would be treated with the pure, powerful essence of the rainforest, a natural remedy far superior to any synthetic drug. It's a vision of a medical system perfectly in tune with nature. Now, let the healer enter your smoky hut and examine you. He listens to your ailment, and his eyes scan the room, the garden, the world around him for the answer. The shocking reality is that his prescription will likely have little to do with the actual pharmacological properties of the ingredients. Instead, it will be based on a system of sympathetic magic and spiritual symbolism. If you have a fever, a hot disease, he might prescribe a food that is considered cold. This doesn't mean its temperature, but its spiritual essence. He might prescribe you a drink made from a plant that grows in a cool, shady spot. If you have a snake bite, he might prescribe a meal made from a plant with a winding, snake-like vine, believing that the plant's form will counteract the snake's venom. The prescriptions could get even more bizarre. Are you suffering from nightmares? Perhaps you will be told to eat the brain of an owl, because owls are creatures of the night and have power over darkness. Are you feeling weak and cowardly? The cure might be to eat the heart of a jaguar, to absorb its courage. The color of the food was also critical. If you were suffering from a yellow disease like jaundice, you would be given a yellow food to eat, or perhaps a yellow flower to drink in a tea. The healer is not thinking like a chemist. He is thinking like a poet, a priest. He is matching symbols, not molecules. The cure is not meant to fix your body's chemistry, but to rebalance your spiritual energy. While some of these remedies, by sheer chance, might have contained beneficial compound sarsaparine from willow bark is a classic example, many would have been utterly ineffective and some, depending on the ingredients, could have even been harmful. So why? Why rely on what seems to us like pure superstition instead of empirical science? The why is that for the Maya, there was no such thing as a purely physical illness. Every ailment from a common cold to a deadly fever had a spiritual cause. You weren't sick because of a germ or a virus. You were sick because your spiritual balance was off. Perhaps you had angered an ancestor, or trespassed on a sacred piece of land, or had a curse placed upon you by a rival. The physical symptoms were just the outward manifestation of this deeper, spiritual malaise. Therefore, a purely physical cure would be pointless. It would be like trying to fix a leak by painting over the water stain on the ceiling. You have to address the root cause. The healer's job was to diagnose the spiritual imbalance and prescribe a symbolic cure that would appease the offended god or counteract the malevolent spirit. Eating the snake like vine was a ritual message to the spirit of the snake. Consuming the yellow food was a way of showing the spirit of the disease that you understood its nature and were incorporating its power in a controlled way. The food was not the medicine itself. It was the vehicle for a magical and spiritual transaction. It was a prayer made edible. This is why the healer was also a priest. His power came not from a textbook of pharmacology, but from his ability to read the symbolic language of the cosmos, to understand the intricate web of connections between plants, animals, gods, and human souls. Your cure depended not on penicillin, but on poetry. This belief that food is a key player in the grand cosmic journey reaches its ultimate expression at the very end of life. The final journey into the underworld, Xibalba, was a perilous one, and you would need provisions. But the preparations for your last meal carried a final, chilling twist, one that connected you forever to the very people who had nourished you in life. The end has come. Whether you are a great king laid out in a magnificent stone tomb, or a simple farmer being prepared for burial beneath your own floor, your journey is not over. It is just beginning. You are about to embark on the most perilous voyage of your existence, a journey through the treacherous, watery maze of the underworld, Xibalba. The glamorous illusion of this final passage is one of solemn, reverent preparation. Your family lovingly washes your body and dresses you in your finest clothes. They surround you with precious objects you will need in the next life, tools for your trade, a favorite piece of jewelry, perhaps a finely wrought ceramic vessel. And of course, they pack you food for the road. You imagine them placing a gourd of fresh water by your side, and a stack of warm, life-giving tortillas or perhaps a special tamal, filled with nourishing beans and squash. It is a final, loving act of care, a packed lunch for eternity, ensuring you do not hunger on your way to meet the gods. It is a tender, peaceful, and poignant farewell. But let us pull back the veil and look at the preparations for the burial of a truly powerful lord, one of the great rulers of a city like Tikal or Calakmul. His tomb is a magnificent chamber, its walls painted with scenes of the underworld. The shocking reality lies not just in what he is buried with, but who. For a king, the journey to Xibalba was not one he was expected to make alone. He would need his court, he would need his advisors, and he would certainly need his cooks. The food packed for his journey might be accompanied by the very people who prepared it. When a great lord died, it was not uncommon for his closest retainers, including his kitchen staff, to be sacrificed and interred with him. Archaeological discoveries in royal tombs have revealed not just a single primary burial, but multiple skeletons arranged around the central figure. These are not family members who died of natural causes. They are the retinue, the attendants sent along to continue their service in the afterlife. The potter who made his ceremonial vessels might be there, his tools beside him. The scribe who recorded his history might be there, a pot of ink still at his side. And the cooks who prepared his daily meals, the women who ground his sacred corn and frothed his royal chocolate, they too might be chosen for this terrible honor. Their final act of service in this life was to prepare the feast for their lord's funeral, knowing that they themselves would be part of the entourage that accompanied him into the darkness. Your last job, as a royal cook, could very well be preparing your own master's last meal, and then joining him at the table forever. So why this ultimate, horrifying act of devotion? The why is the logical conclusion of the entire Mayan worldview. The afterlife, particularly for a king, was not a hazy, ethereal heaven. It was a tangible, political reality. The king was not just dying, he was transitioning to a new, even more powerful role as a divine ancestor. But in this new role, he would still have needs. He would still need to eat, to be attended to maintain the status and comfort he enjoyed in life. To send him into the underworld alone would be to diminish him, to send him unprepared for the challenges he would face from the cunning gods of Xibalba. It would be a dereliction of duty on the part of his subjects. For the retainers chosen to accompany him, it was not seen as murder. It was the highest, most profound honor they could ever achieve. They were not merely dying, they were being chosen to bypass the normal, uncertain path of the dead and go directly into the service of a divine being. Their loyalty in life was rewarded with an eternal position of importance in the next. They would continue their essential work, ensuring their lord's power and comfort, which in turn would ensure his ability to intercede on behalf of the living community he left behind. The act was a testament to the absolute power of the king, a power that transcended the veil of death itself. The food for the afterlife was not just corn and beans, it was the life force of the very people who knew how to prepare it, a final, chilling recipe where the main ingredient was devotion itself. And now, my dear friends, our journey through the forgotten flavors of the ancient Maya comes to a gentle close. The smoke from the hearth fire begins to thin as the embers die down. The vibrant colors of the chili and the sacred blue pigment fade into the soft grays of memory. The sharp taste of lime-treated corn, the bitter shock of royal chocolate, and the earthy secret of the huitlacoche all meld together, becoming part of the deep, silent history of the jungle. The stories of sacrifice, of pain, and of profound, unsettling belief soften at the edges now, their sharp realities giving way to the gentle cadence of a story told. The world of the Maya, so full of life and flavor, was a world that understood the deep and unbreakable connection between sustenance and the sacred, between the food that nourishes the body and the beliefs that feed the soul. It was a world where every meal was a prayer, and every flavor told a story. As you drift now, let these ancient tastes dissolve on your tongue. Let the spirits of the ancestors beneath the floor rest peacefully. Let the memory of the hunter's strange catch, the feel of the masa, the sting of the chili smoke, all become part of the dreamscape you are about to enter. There are no more secrets to uncover tonight, no more shocking realities to confront. There is only the quiet rustle of the leaves, the soft hum of the night, and the gentle pull of sleep. Rest now. Let the deep, dark, nourishing earth of the past cradle you as you drift into your own quiet underworld of dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.